Joining the team from Cobalt Engagement is also Robert from McGregor Coxall. Thanks, Robert, for joining us. He'll be presenting some highlights of the master plan this evening. From Council, we've got Josh Corliss, Group Leader, Technical Services, and Gemma Stella from Communications and Engagement. So thanks everyone from the team for being here, and thank you for you coming out on a cooler evening, probably not as cool as it is for some of us down here. So moving along, if we finish at 8, that'll be nice, and I think everyone will be happy. We'll see how many questions everyone has. Everyone's adults here, and it was such a wonderful workshop last time. I don't think we'll have any issues, but today is about listening and listening to different points of view. It's okay if people have different views, and it'll be good if we just wait and listen to each person as they speak, topic to the master plan as well. So otherwise, it's fairly straightforward, and we will also finish on time, if not early. So the objectives of the session this evening is to explain the objectives and scope of the master plan, to provide an overview of the Draft Urunga CBD Master Plan that's currently on exhibition, and to explain how to lodge a submission, which is due next week by 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 11th of July. And then we're going to have a Q&A to provide an opportunity for you to ask your questions and seek any clarifications on what is on exhibition. So 3 draft CBD master plans are currently on exhibition: Dorrigo, Bellingen and Urunga. Many of you were there earlier this year in terms of our in-person upfront engagement workshops that we had in February, and we had a considerable number of people participate in our survey as well, which was really exciting. That engagement has informed the development of these draft CBD master plans, and the role of these master plans is to provide strategic guidance and a framework for future investment in short, medium and long-term improvements to each of the CBDs. If you look at the detail of these master plans, McGregor Coxall has done a wonderful job of demonstrating how some of the key themes and priorities of the community aligns with the key actions of the master plan. You can see that in some of the tables at the back of the master plan as well. So your input is really important and has been important. And also there will be an opportunity for your submissions to make any final tweaks to the final master plans. So we encourage you, please, to put in a submission. As many of you are aware, there was a number of workshops conducted in February, in person and online. And we also met with a number of key stakeholders, and we did a survey. We can see there's a great photo there from the Urunga workshop, which was great. We got a lot of people at Urunga. 38 people came out on that really hot evening. And we had 791 people complete the survey across the Shire. And with, I think, a considerable amount, 207 completing it for Urunga, which was really, really encouraging as well. So it's a pretty passionate and engaged community, and we really thank you for your involvement tonight and to date in this process. So here's a summary of how your input for the Urunga CBD Master Plan really came together. The community engagement report is also on public exhibition. It provides quite a direct summary and short, succinct summary for each CBD. And then in the appendix, you can see a workshop report for each of those workshops and a detailed survey analysis. So you can see that, you know, on all of these post-its, they actually have all been collated into that appendix of the report, and that all of the different inputs have been analysed with qualitative and quantitative analysis into these key things, which are really the so what, and helped guide some of the directions that the urban designers at McGregor Coxall were able to take notes from and to really understand. So some of those key directions that have influenced the master plan involve creating more places to play and stay. The community identified that there's limited places for people to stay and sit in the public space, and that there needed to be more people-friendly places and places for the community to connect. It's a really strong community, but that's not always seen in the public space. People also wanted improved safety and accessibility. Talking about footpath conditions and lighting and access to disabled parking was came up a lot, and that's something that was listened to in terms of the process. There was a desire to connect to the beautiful foreshore. As you all know, it's quite hard to walk down through the caravan park, and from your CBD, there's not as many views as there could be to the beautiful nature, and that's something that people wanted to really get out there and connect with nature and to have that experience whilst in the CBD. People had a desire to attract visitors and to attract them to the CBD, and to improve the offer in terms of the restaurants and provide more things for people to do, to support locals as well as visitors. They wanted to support active transport and more safety for walking. Many people stated that even though they lived quite close to the CBD, because they felt a bit unsafe to walk, they would actually drive quite a short way, which is a bit of a shame, where there could be great opportunities to get people walking into town. And they also wanted to see the streets activated for events. This really great community wants to have a place to celebrate and to support businesses and to connect with each other. And proving key streets or potentially some sort of plaza or central gathering spot was something that was identified. So in terms of the timeline of this project, we're nearly there. So we've had all of our survey and workshops, and now we're up to number 5, the draft exhibition, which is on just until the 11th next week. It is really, your submissions are important, and often some people are motivated to write a submission when they're really upset or they want to strongly express a negative view. But we're also keen to hear about some of the things that you really like about the master plan, which you might see are priorities. So feel free to put in a range of comments in your submission. And just so you know, these submissions will be read, taken seriously, and that we at Cobalt Engagement will be writing an independent submissions report that will go to Council and McGregor Coxall, and there will be an opportunity to review some of the detail of those master plans. So this is an important exercise, and you are being listened to. And on that note, I'll hand over to Josh from Council.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nicole. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming along tonight. Do appreciate it. So it's sort of like was touched on with Nicole. For Council, this process started way back in January or February when we undertook the community engagement. So look, we actively listen to the community first before developing these master plans. So we'd like to hope that the master plans developed sort of do reflect what the community wants to see moving forward into the future. Over sort of like Nicole said, it is a strategic document. So this is something that Council will reference for quite a number of years, sort of moving forward. So yeah, look, in terms of feedback, I'm very interested. Like I read everything that comes back in terms of feedback, and I'd really like to know from you all, like, have we hit the mark or have we missed out in places, things like that. So yeah, definitely encourage the feedback. In terms of these documents, generally the things that go into them are unfunded. So they're a strategic document that Council will use to seek funding and sort of align all our projects and things like that. Urunga is a little bit different in terms of we have a little bit of money, as I'm sure lots of you know. So there will be some sort of activation of essentially will likely be the Bowra Street sort of intersection area. So you hear more about that over the next sort of coming months as more details emerge. But yeah, thank you all for coming along and look forward to it. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Josh. Now I'd like to hand over to Robert Snelling from McGregor Coxall to take us through an overview of the draft master plan that's on exhibition. Thanks, Robert.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nicole. So firstly, I want to say thank you to everyone who's contributed through all the community engagement, the workshops and the surveys. All the findings, observations, on the ground views and understanding of the site has been incredibly helpful with developing the master plan for Urunga. And so we spent a lot of time reading through all those different submissions and all those different observations. And so as Josh and Nicole have said, these have been really the foundations of how we've developed this master plan. So we really hope that the findings really resonate with what you were communicating through all those different workshops. So as a key starting point for the master plan, we really started to look at what makes Urunga a really unique place in relation to its surrounding context. And so as part of that, we looked at some of the neighboring towns surrounding Urunga, and we found that what really makes Urunga characteristically unique is that it has this very beautiful kind of smaller, quiet town character in comparison to some of the other larger centres nearby. And in addition to that, it has these amazing natural assets, which I'm sure many of you greatly enjoy all the time with the wetlands and the lagoons. But then in particular, the riverside location as the confluence of two rivers as a real key primary point of difference, which really offers safer water recreation for all ages and visitors, and also different types of water recreation as well. And so this was kind of some of the early key ideas that really started to drive how we developed the master plan. If we move to the next slide. So this goes through at a very high level some of the key ideas of what we heard, particularly from all the different community engagement workshops and surveys, but also what we observed when visiting on the ground. And so in the master plan report, a lot of these details are explored and more fleshed out. So I definitely recommend that you go and read the report in detail for more precise observations and things that we've identified. But broadly under 4 key themes, under the first theme of environment, some of the key things that we heard and observed is about the poor connectivity to the Lido and the boardwalk from the CBD, and how particularly there isn't a strong physical or visual connection between the two. And that was something that was to really be emphasized and developed. There were also issues of long-term flooding and sea level rise. And so as a result, anything new that is proposed is about managing these risks as much as we can. But then also looking at the diverse and sensitive ecosystems and ensuring that the development is sensitive to the great ecological corridors and places that already exist in Urunga. Then looking at movement, there's lots of strong feedback about unsafe pedestrian movement, particularly along Morgo Street with the lack of pedestrian crossings along there to connect to the foreshore, but also just generally throughout the CBD as well. And then also lots of commentary about car parking and ensuring that particularly during the busy peak season in summer that there is enough parking for both guests and for locals. In land use, what was heard a lot was particularly about ensuring that there's recreational activities for all ages, particularly with, say, the skate park that's at quite a far distance from the CBD and is a bit more separated, and how there's a real strong opportunity to improve on that. There are also comments about how the Lido is perceived as a bit tourist first rather than for the community. And so that is something to sort of think about as we develop the master plan. And also this point about ensuring that the great council assets that already exist, such as the library in that kind of green space towards the south of the CBD, could be better connected both to the CBD, but also to the foreshore. And then finally, public realm, there's a really strong desire to have a more vibrant dining scene, particularly outdoor, al fresco, making the most of those lovely, warm, long summer evenings. Lots of commentary about making sure the footpaths are much more age-friendly and ensuring that there's adequate crossings, widths, but also being shaded in summer so that people feel protected as they're walking around. And so then from that, we culminated all the different summaries and ideas, observations to come up with a key sort of a sort of driving statement to drive Urunga forwards. And so this can be summarized as about diversifying Urunga's recreational offering to foster an activated city centre through higher quality places connected to the foreshore. And really what's been driving this is about ensuring that we cater to what all of the community have expressed and the types of spaces they would like to see, but then also building on the great opportunity to attract visitors and how we can support both groups and actually support each other through that. So with that, there's kind of 3 key big moves that have been suggested in the master plan. Firstly is this idea of connecting back to the foreshore. And so this is about improving the physical connection, so the walkability and the accessibility to the foreshore, but also the visual connectivity from Morgo Street. And so that's particularly for people, say, if they're driving down Morgo Street, can actually see the harbour, can see the river. And then there's greater connection for walking down Bowra and Bonville Street to then walk down to the foreshore in a really seamless process. The second key move was looking at trying to make Urunga a place to play and stay for all ages. And so looking at various other examples of towns that have really become a great stopover place for visitors as they're coming through. One of the key strategies they've been using is looking at developing great skate parks and nature play and water play right on the foreshore. And it becomes a really great magnet for attracting people, but also being a place for locals to play and stay as well. And so it's really about creating a place for everyone to enjoy, but as well as attracting visitors. And then the third key move was about activating the streets and the edges. So these comments about having al fresco dining and a really activated street edge is really about identifying the unique characters of each of the different streets. So for example, Bowra being much more about food and beverage and a really strong potential for al fresco dining along there, whereas Bonville has more of a sort of local flavor to it and has more local services. And then Morgo Street has this great potential to be a sort of a water-facing promenade. And so really clearly trying to understand what's the unique quality of each of those places and how we can really make them into activated spaces. So the master plan then goes through a wide range of particular strategies that we recommend. And so as a high level, we've then started to form them into a few key focus areas. And so tonight we'll also go into a bit more detail about two of those. Overall, there are four kind of key areas that we figured were, or identified that were key priorities to develop for Urunga moving forwards. Firstly was the foreshore link. And then there's various elements within this, which I'll go into more detail in a moment, about trying to create all these variety of spaces to play, to stay, to socialize, and really creating a really attractive place on the foreshore for everyone to enjoy. A second key area is the street activation strategy along Bowra and Bonville Street. And this is looking at things such as parklets and flexible infrastructure, improved lighting, and then potentially temporary street closures to explore what really works to activate these streets and to try different configurations. A third key focus area was then Morgo Street, which was about really improving the pedestrian connection from the CBD to the foreshore, as well as other elements such as improving the footpaths, having shading consistently across, as well as activating some of the sites along there to really make it a street that is much more facing onto the river. And then finally, the area called what we're calling the Civic Walk, which is where there's existing great green spaces and these great cultural civic assets, and sort of linking them all up, but particularly down to the foreshore area. So focusing more on that foreshore link, the master plan goes into some detail of what this might start to look like. So this isn't a final design or anything at this stage. It's giving a flavor of what this could start to be looking like and what's the kind of feeling that it could have. But as a kind of indication, there are some key high-level areas that we identified that have really strong potential and should really sort of help drive the design of this foreshore link into the future. One of these was the Fig Tree Plaza. So there are these great fig trees and they create this great shaded, generous space. And that becomes this great opening down to the foreshore. From there would be a shared zone promenade that then links up to what we're kind of calling a children and youth recreation area. So creating a range of recreational activities for a whole range of different ages. This is also then in close proximity to many of the great existing spaces that Urunga has, such as the Lido and the Boardwalk, as well as various walks, and really starting to stitch up this walking network that Urunga is starting to develop. This is all while retaining the existing car parking, as well as starting to open up some of the view lines from Morgo Street. So then there's a really clear visual link down to the foreshore. And I believe next we've got some preset images to kind of give an indication of what that might start to look like. So on the left is the existing fig trees on Morgo Street, and on the right are some precedents which kind of speak to the flavour of what this space could start to feel like. Particularly the first one is from Sawtell and its adjacency next to a high street, but then the sort of public furniture, street furniture underneath creates this really great shaded canopy that could be a really wonderful space and a great addition to the Urunga town centre. And then secondly, below is this idea of this green link that connects down to the foreshore and to connect to what could be a really wonderful recreational space for all ages. So this is a project, the Gosford Leagues Club Park, where there's this great water play that is very much integrated into the landscape and becomes a really great place for locals to play, but also attracting visitors as well. Then for the second kind of focus strategy area that we've been looking at is looking at the activation of Bonville and Bowra Street. And so using particularly some of that funding that Josh mentioned before, looking at different strategies that we can deploy to really understand what will make this space a really vibrant outdoor dining kind of space. So this involves things such as looking at parklets and flexible infrastructure to see what type of activities will help make these streets much more activated all year round, whether that's things such as street games and outdoor dining. This may also involve temporary street closures, and that's not necessarily all streets closed at once. It might just be small segments and sort of seeing what works and what doesn't. There's also really important public domain upgrades as well as part of this, things such as improving lighting to improve street amenity and also improve nighttime safety, as well as then improving footpaths through things such as additional shading and an increased tree canopy. And then we've got some precedent images that speak to some really successful examples of these flexible activation strategies that have happened. So on the left, showing existing Bowra Street, and then on the right, 2 examples of projects which work with flexible infrastructure, which enables different configurations to be tried to then really understand, you know, what's going to make this street actually the most successful that it can be. So that's a really high level summary of the master plan. I recommend you read the master plan in more detail. It goes into a lot more exploration of how all these strategies will work, as well as many more strategies beyond the ones in those key focus areas.
Great, thanks, Robert. So now we'll throw it open to questions. I do encourage you, it's fine to have a couple of comments, but not, you know, a long speech. You know, a couple of thoughts and a question would be great, but we'd love to hear from a couple of you, or all of you tonight. We've got 35 minutes. We've got time to hear from everyone. Would anyone like to start? Who has a question? Andrew?
Well, I'd like to start with I'll take the liberty of a comment, Nicole, that it's a really exciting document, and congratulations to everybody involved. From my point of view, that it just struck me, it's so clear that you listen to us as a community, that it's really clear that it's written as our plan. It's we're the people who live here. And it's just like really exciting. And that summary then, Robert, it's great because there were some things I needed to clarify, like what was meant by the Fig Tree Plaza and just, yeah, that opening up of the foreshore. So yeah, I just think, Nicole, just to log that comment, that at least, you know, from mine, we did have a discussion as the Chamber of Commerce last week as an executive and with our members, and that was the theme of our discussion, that it really outlines a really exciting plan for the town. So congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Andrew. We don't normally get such good feedback. So thank you very much. Did you want to ask any more questions about that Fig Tree area? Do you want me to pull
No,
that?
it's clear now. I wasn't sure whether it was the Green Plaza that runs beside the library and the neighbourhood centre, but I can see it's now referred to, and it'll probably become known as the strip down through the caravan park, which, by the way, yeah, when Jude and I first arrived in town we avoided that street because we thought it was, private access to the caravan park, and it was only after we went around the loop on the southern side of the northern side of the caravan park, that we realised that was a public access domain, and so you've nailed that as well.
Great, fantastic. Anyone else?
So yes, I've got a question. It's Jeanette also from the Chamber of Commerce. When you say the fig tree, we're going to open up the fig tree and take 2 car spaces away from Reflections, there's going to have to be a lot of discussion with the Crown Lands Reflection people about that. How have you had experience with doing that, and how do you think that's going to go? Oh, I love the whole plan. I just think it'd be wonderful if that opened up. I know the original, like we've only been here 10 years, but before that, when they actually put that road in with Reflections, the locals had to rise up in arms to keep that open. The Reflections wanted to kind of close it off completely at that time. So it's really lovely to see it open up. So how do you think that's going to go?
Have Reflections been consulted over any of these, or
I'll throw that over to Josh, because I know I'm quite familiar.
We're certainly in sort of open conversation with Reflections, and we do a lot with them. We're currently, sort of delivering that upgrade of the amenities block on their behalf and that sort of thing down there.
Oh yeah, that's good.
In regards to sort of how we go with Reflections, look, we'd like to approach it that any of these things in the master plan that benefits us and benefits the community, but it also benefits Reflections. At the end of the day, they are a sort of a commercial arm of Crown Lands, and they are interested in seeing their visitor base rise and that sort of thing. So we're advertising it, we're pushing it with them as a way that we can sort of in the long term benefit everyone. So yeah, look, there might be some short term teething things of trying to get a few car parks out of their hands and back to the public, but I think we'll get there.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Just the Bonville Street area and your overall plans for outdoor dining and things. At the moment, it's very much concentrated around outside the boardwalk and spa and that section of road. Getting it around the corner. So are they kind of widened footpaths that you've got marked there in purple, or is that and the narrow street, is that a plan for
one way?
Like a permanent one way? It's thinking in terms of creating a something like Church Street in Bellow, where you've got a little restaurant area and some seats and outdoor.
Look, I'll probably jump in on that one. Like, so as you guys know, it's like we do have a sort of sum of money to do some activations and sort of upgrades. We're quite cognizant that pot probably won't go too far if we start doing major sort of curb adjustments and things like that. And that's sort of why we're proposing this sort of flexible, we'll call it flexible, but it's a softer sort of introduction of like it's on the screen now, the ability to test out these widened footpaths or potential one-way or closures and things like that without us investing large sums of money to adjust drainage and stormwater and all the bits and pieces that come with it. Look, in our end goal is certainly for Urunga is to create something similar to what we have in Church Street in sort of that, in terms of that widened area, and provide the the on-street dining and things like that. But it's, I guess for council, it's we need to provide some infrastructure to try and encourage the businesses to come with us and open up that dining thing and whatever, and I guess it can grow from there. So look, I guess long story short is we don't have a final answer on what exactly that will look like at this stage. It's trying to bring the community and the businesses along for the ride with us while we figure that out, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good sort of plan, Josh. Will that go to public exhibition before you start doing it? Will we have a chance to have a input into this particular part?
Look, it should do. I dare say. I'm not we don't have a design, an exact design of what we're doing that with that money yet. We're waiting for this master plan to sort of go through and for the comments to come back from that. But look, I dare say there'll be a chance for that to be on public exhibition. It may not be quite as formal in terms of through council and out for 28 days, but there will definitely be on exhibition for a period.
Yes, there's a bit of consultation around that. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks, Josh. And it's definitely a bigger bang for your buck with some of these temporary things we've seen around the state and around Australia that have come out of COVID. And also in terms of it being a pilot program, you know, can provide the opportunity before you spend all your money on a permanent thing, you can have a go and then
It does get it done at least, which is good.
yeah, and also see what you, if you'd like to half close or full close, you know, you can test it out and decide after trialing it. Great, Derek, you've got your hand up. You might still be on mute. Are you there, Derek? Yeah.
Okay, I'm there. Sorry, we came late. Apologies. So I may have missed something, but a major issue for this village is parking, and it's starting to sound like parking is going to be reduced even further, especially if you start doing road closures around the village. We've only been here 35 years, so we're not locals. But much as it sounds great, that is the elephant in the room, is parking in this village. You have a public school that chews up a huge amount of parking during the day, and that is not their fault. That is just some developmental design faults over colonisation, is the best way to put it. So I guess my question is, if you're going to start closing roads but continuing to develop this area, where are people going to park? And this is just the beginning of questions.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. We'll start with parking. That did come up a lot in the workshop, and it was something people were very aware of. Robert, would you like to start, and then maybe Josh?
Yeah, I can start with that. No, so I completely understand the comments and where they're coming from. So with the master plan, there are some areas where we've looked at potentially expanding car parking, potentially maybe during high season, for example, in Morgo Street Reserve. And so council already has existing documents that talk about strategies to try and manage where to accommodate extra parking. In terms of what you're referring to in terms of the public school, that is a conversation that I believe Josh is having elsewhere in terms of how to manage that. I'll let him speak more to that. But in terms of the temporary street closure, it doesn't necessarily mean all parking has to be removed. And that is something that can be worked through in detail, as understanding whether car parking is maintained or not. But that is something that can be worked through in more detail once that area moves into more of a design development phase.
Yeah, and I think, disabled parking came up a bit as well. And this we're at a higher level here, as we're not saying exactly where, but I think there was a recommendation in your master plan, Robert, is that right? Just to make sure there's appropriate disabled parking, because the location of that was a concern to the community.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's gone in there as well in terms of that. When that comes to the further detail, that's definitely been incorporated in the detail, which we didn't present all of that today.
Could I add something to that, please?
Yes.
If the cycleways were improved in this village, more people would be encouraged to ride their bicycles to town instead of driving their cars. And it is a really poor reflection on council that they encourage people to ride on Hungry Head Road in particular. That rule is abused by cyclists. It's quite a dangerous road for cyclists. If there were better cycleways, people could safely ride on these kind of roads. But I think there's also a case for, and council needs to talk to state government about maintaining the existing cycleways on Ginnegay Way, which are unsafe for cyclists to use because they're covered in leaf litter and branches and sticks and weeds. So I think there's a serious need to look at cycleways in this village. If you're going to start doing this stuff and so on, I think you need to encourage less vehicle traffic and encourage more cycle traffic and pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, definitely, Derek. And I know you missed the beginning, and that was a real key outcome of the first workshop in terms of improving access to active transport, both walking and cycling. And many people at the first workshop shared that they live quite close but don't even walk into town because the condition of the footpaths, needs improvement. So I'll throw over to Rob, and then we'll get Josh after that to talk about, I think, the parking as well.
No, thank you. So yes, active transport is absolutely an element of the master plan. So even in the drawing here, the arrows that are going out are starting to indicate where we might start to prioritize those active transport links. But something I will just say about this particular master plan is it's focusing more on the CBD than necessarily the broader transport links. That's a separate piece of work that I believe council will be looking at some point. But what this master plan can start to do is to provide the cycling infrastructure within the town. So things such as bicycle parking and those kinds of amenities to really start to encourage cycling and ensuring that from the start to the end of the trip, that cycling is encouraged and it is as safe as it can be. Josh, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add.
No, look, not a few things. Like I guess in terms of parking, it's as council we're very cognizant that parking is an issue in Urunga and then all of our towns really. So it is something that we're actively trying to balance, sort of that need for parking, but also with activating our streetscapes for pedestrians and sort of other sort of users. So look, at this stage, there's definitely no promise that there won't be a loss of some parks in some of these areas, but I guess we're trying to understand how we can provide other infrastructures, like Rob said, in terms of cycle parking and things like that, to try and encourage sort of the foot traffic or the cycle traffic into the CBD. Just in terms of so you're all aware, in terms of Ginnegay Way and sort of those sort of things, that's something that council's quite actively advocating for with Transport for New South Wales, is increased maintenance in those areas. Not sure if you're aware, but Ginnegay Way is still a state road, still maintained by Transport for New South Wales, and hasn't been handed back to council at this stage. So we're sort of in constant talks with them about how that sort of situation can be handled better than it is currently. But yeah, look, I guess long story short is, yeah, very, very aware that parking is an issue, and we're not going to just go and remove large areas without sort of trying to provide an alternative in other places.
Yeah, great, thanks.
A couple of other things on parking. One, you've got in.
Sorry, Andrew. John just had his hand up for a long time. I might just throw to him, and then I'll come back to you.
Come back to parking.
Yeah. Okay. So, John.
It was just a note that you, on all your maps for Urunga, you have the train station in rather a unique place. And it's particularly relevant when you're on the connectivity section of your master plan. The train station is actually in the place. The map matches the ground.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you go, Nicole.
Oh, no, throw to you, Robert.
I was going to say, no, thank you. We'll look at that in more detail for the final master plan.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for the pickup. Thanks, John. We'll go back to you, Andrew.
Sorry, where's the put up your hand icon?
Yeah, I can't find it either, Andrew.
That's right. You can just raise your hand.
Okay, we'll do that.
There is a tech way, but you can also just do this.
All right. So on parking, you make mention in the draft, which I think does pick up the concern of many of us, is to implement selected timed car parking, which I think has a lot of merit, because that then avoids people parking all day and taking up convenient spaces for people coming in and out doing their business. And then secondly, it was Robert mentioned that Josh might be having conversations with the public school. Josh, only go to that if it's if it's something that you can talk about in this sort of arena. But that's one that a few of us were thinking, we'd need to have a discussion with the public school. Is there anything happening with the school? And that is that the staff and teachers occupy a lot of spaces all day.
Yeah, look, it is a conversation that we have had with the public school. Look, I guess the same as everything else, it's trying to, balance their needs with the rest of the community, and not just taking away that parking without sort of providing an alternative. for them.
Yep.
But yeah, look, that is something that we're certainly looking to implement, is that timed parking in the back of the car park, sort of behind the ocean view.
Okay, was it, yes, Jennifer?
Yeah, I've just got a little bit of a comment. Sorry. In the resilience section at the beginning of the plan, there's no mention of development of the retail space or any, and I know, and granted the medium density housing would be outside of the CBD, but I think that there's limitations around what we can do in the CBD because we don't have space for retailers to develop, even if they wanted to be there. And then I noticed that the development of the retail section, you talk about it in page 30, 35, 39 and 44, I think. And I just felt like it might have needed to be mentioned in that resilience area as a high level part of this plan.
In terms of the retail, just to clarify, the retail.
Yeah, the development of that retail sector and opportunities for retail, because our CBD is very limited and a lot of the space is taken up by government buildings other than the library. So if we were to have a vibrant retail sector, there'd need to be changes there. And I just felt that that might have been able to be mentioned up in the resilience area.
Yeah, I'll throw to you, Robert.
Yeah, no, that's a really great observation. And it'd be great if you could put that into the feedback form as well. Yeah, so in terms of resilience, in terms of the community is ensuring about there is diversity of commerce and a diversity of spaces. So that is definitely we can have a think about in the master plan.
Yeah, great. So I've got John's hand up again, and then we'll go to Derek. So John, you're still on mute. You might need to unmute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're showing a link between Bonville Street and Morgo Street to connect to the Fig Tree Plaza and onwards to the thing. There's already that involves the green space between the library and the built area, and there's also currently a very nice avenue of trees there as well. I'm just curious what ideas or concepts you have for developing that link between Bonville Street and Morgo Street. It needs to be done carefully.
Yeah, great. I'll throw to Robert in terms what's the thinking behind that green connection, and what are the kinds of things you'd imagine that would be in there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of all those qualities that you just mentioned about the different civic spaces, the trees, the green spaces, those in what we're envisaging would be retained. It's really about improving a formal pedestrian link through there. So for example, a little bit of hardscaping, not necessarily to the full width, absolutely not. It's a great space to be outdoors under the shade, and we really want to retain those qualities. But it's providing just a bit more of a safer connection, maybe with some lighting, some shaded street furniture, things like that, that make it a bit more of a usable space for a whole range of different people all throughout the day and the year. And then that really nicely then links up to a pedestrian crossing along Morgo Street and then into the Fig Tree Plaza and then down to the foreshore. So then we have this really strong pedestrian link all the way through from Bonville down to the foreshore. So it's not necessarily at all about removing or changing those spaces. I can see how that might come across with that diagram being a sort of big blob, but that's not the intention at all.
And just to keep it clear, this is a strategic document, and it's showing that intention, and any future plans or development or improvements will be subject to that detailed design. But what this master plan, I think I hear what you're saying, Robert, is strategically needs to link, needs to be green, retaining green infrastructure, improving amenity and pedestrian comfort and access, connecting the CBD to the foreshore. And we would hope any detailed design, when funding comes through for that, this is definitely one of the more longer term, bigger investments in this CBD. We'd hope that, that intention would be carried through, and council would have this document to ensure that guides that design.
You'll need a pedestrian crossing at that end as well of Bonville Street. from the post office across.
Yeah. Derek, you've had your hand up.
Yeah. Sorry to harp on about parking, but I've just remembered it's probably 10 to 15 years ago at a previous proposed master plan that parking was put forward for the school to be on Bellingen Street, just below where their new flashing lights are at the northwest end, which is part of the golf club. It is a flood-prone area, but if it's flooded, school will be closed, and there is quite a fair bit of land there that would not need much work to add additional car parking for the school, and everybody seems to have forgotten about that one.
Josh, do you remember that?
Good point, Derek. Good point.
Good point.
I certainly wasn't at council when that one happened.
No, I was going to say it was before your time, mate.
but no, I have been made aware of that, mate, and it is something that we are looking at as alternative ways to provide sort of this car parking for the school. Yeah,
it makes everybody happy because the teachers have a very short walk to get to their school, and they're not taking up the car park behind the pub. So, like, it's an easy fix. It'll cost you a few dollars in bitumen, but let's get on with it. Like I said,
good to see that back in.
Years old, that one.
Be good to see that back in your submission, so we can get that back into council. Andrew.
Yes, a hand up. Just one suggestion in terms of vision and the 20-year vision and what makes Urunga unique. So this is an observation that might lead to a tweaking in the final plan. And like I said before, there's so much in this plan that it's not right to pick on just one thing. But in terms of the vision, when I was reading it and reflecting on it, the vision statements are almost weighted too much in favour of Urunga being attractive to visitors.
Yes.
Versus now, I know, Robert, you said you're spot on when you said earlier that it's about both residents and visitors. But when you read, like, the 20-year vision starts out with the external, the visitor statement as being the first sentence. Urunga is strategically positioned to become a key stopover destination for families. So the writer is almost, and then back in page 17, what's unique? Unique is, was actually, to be fair, the last statement on page 17, that we become well known as a water recreation destination. So I'd just, in making that observation, it's actually, I'd prefer you didn't flick back, because people will then be like trying to pick up those words. The point is that the vision should, I think, be weighted to the people who live here, so it's, diversified. Urunga's recreational offering versus that's an external observation, that's an attraction to visitors, versus if it was Urunga's recreational facilities, so just I just urge that in looking at unique, the 20-year vision, that it be weighted as much towards or more towards than what it currently is. The residents, people who choose to live here, the village, the attractive centre, the foreshore, and even with a 20-year vision, like if that statement about that it's a stopover destination,
that is so good what he's saying.
That could follow towards the end, So just a tweaking in the final report. Weight the vision more towards those who are lucky to live and will live here over the next 20 years. And by the way, those sort of things will be attractive to visitors, which is good for the economy and good for the rest of us. But that's just an observation in the current drafting of the draft.
I think, Andrew, it's a really good point. At the workshop, some of depending on what table you were at, there were some different groups in terms of balancing, different comments around attracting visitors and also, improving it for locals. And when we did go through also all the survey data, there was actually, it actually was fairly, and if you look into the engagement report and the surveyed report, there was sort of nearly 2 camps in Urunga about really trying to attract visitors to keep the town going, and then others much more protective and making sure it's comfortable for residents. So I think that's a good point to, for Robert to take a look at balancing the language. But there was definitely 2 points of view there, that there were some people who were quite concerned about the future viability and the amount of retail that could be there, and seeing the need to really actually try and attract people, of that being a big priority. So we did our best in terms of balancing those messages. Robert, do you want to make any comments on your thinking around balancing the needs of visitors and also residents and the local?
Yeah, no, I think you answered it spot on in terms of there's different views, and it's about creating that balance. But I think what would be really fantastic, Andrew, is if you clearly gone through and read the report and highlighted where you felt that the language wasn't balanced, is in your submission to make note of those. And so it's really helpful as someone who is an external view to the master plan to understand how that language really resonates. So that would be of really great use to us.
Great, thanks, Robert. I'll go to John and then I'll go to Bruce.
Right. I'd like to reinforce Andrew's comment, because on a 20-year forecast, it would not be unreasonable to expect another 1,000 homes being built in Urunga. And, at 2 people per residence minimum, reasonable. You've got another 2,000 residents who will be looking to CBD facilities. I didn't see any reference in the plan to future residential development.
Do you want to comment on that, Robert, in terms of future residential development, or I can throw to Josh?
I might hear Josh, did you have anything to say on that in particular?
I'll probably just jump in and just generally clarify that that's probably outside the scope of this master plan. We do have other sort of strategic planning documents in terms of our housing strategy and things like that do nominate sort of development areas and things like that. But yeah, there's probably especially outside the study area of this master plan. Yeah,
in terms of, this was really focused on the CBD. Great. So it was Bruce next.
Yeah, hi. On that same in that same area, the building heights and things like that, because there will become a desire to have higher rise buildings with views of the waterfront and things like that over time, as if Urunga becomes more for visitors than locals. And so part of this will be managing heights and building codes and things like that, because people will want to put 5 stories along the waterfront there and get a view. Things like that. So maybe not in the scope of this, but certainly it needs some awareness and maybe some comment from council about that direction.
So you're saying you're supportive or not supportive of increased height?
It just needs to be considered. I mean, it's possibly good in some areas where it would be unobtrusive and probably a good idea. We do need to get people in somehow around where services exist, but in other places it would be quite inappropriate. And so, what's the mechanism around that? Because that type of pressure is going to come on us, sooner or later.
Next to the club, there's a vacant
Next to the club, there'll be places, but particularly waterfront. It happens everywhere where you have waterfront. Someone wants to put 4, 5, 6, 7 stories there.
Do you want to comment on that, Josh, about the potential for increased density in the CBD area?
Look, it's certainly not something that was proposed through this master plan. Not saying that won't happen, like you say, at some point in the future down the line, but at this stage, council is not proposing to increase those building heights or the density limits that currently exist. Look, I guess if anything, that will come through a review of our LEP and our sort of planning documents and things like that, which I don't know a time frame of when that's proposed at this stage.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. I just flagged that this is the way that it will go. We need to.
Derek's got his hand up, then Jeanette. So Derek.
Here I go again. Sorry. I think it is remiss of this development plan to not factor in development. You've got Black Bottle just happening. It's going ahead. There'll be 2 cars in every driveway. There'll be 2 dogs, there'll be 4 cats, there'll be 2 caravans, whatever. I don't think council can say we're not factoring this into this development plan when they are talking about development. There's development of a new water tank up at Hungry Head. So that means they are planning more development. So I think realistically, council can't say, oh, we're not factoring that into this development plan. When, I'm sorry, guys, you do need to factor in this development. Even Black Bottle is going to cause problems for the village of Urunga. It is. You wait and see. Sorry.
So Derek, just to clarify, so I think what Josh said before is that this CBD master plan is not proposing an increase in heights within the CBD study area, but this CBD master plan does consider infrastructure improvements to support increased people and it has taken into account, if I understand correctly, Robert, and I'll throw to you, improvements and increase in population, increase in traffic and tourists. So I'll throw over to Robert. Just wanted to, am I understanding your comment is, you know, has this master plan not considered population growth? Is that the comment, the question?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I think, and it's going to get more rapid is the issue. And no matter what we try, no matter how we try and slow it down, I don't think we get a choice in that, because New South Wales government is hell bent on develop, and they override every thing they can.
Sewage farm.
Yeah.
Look, and they've just given council a lot of money for sewage farms.
Yeah, you know, there's a huge grant. The sewage farm is being expanded, so there's more development on the way. So
So I think I'll get Robert to clarify first. Just the first thing is, did you consider, you know, South Urunga's growing and, you know, population increase and the housing strategy I know you're aware of, was that considered in terms of this CBD master plan from an increase of use of the CBD?
Yeah, so to clarify, all those sort of external factors were considered in the sense of, as Nicole said, the CBD is going to have increased visitation, it's going to be increased users, so it's about supporting that in terms of things such as retail and those kinds of spaces and wider footpaths. But the master plan didn't necessarily consider the infrastructure requirements of things such as sewerage or those kinds of parts. I think that's more of a council question.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Derek, I think what maybe you got tripped up on is that this master plan is not proposing increased development in this CBD.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, okay, and there might be increased development in other suburbs, and that's what I think the housing strategy speaks to.
I think the magic word might be congestion.
Okay, yeah.
Right, I that might be the simplest way of putting it without getting into arguments and so on and so forth. I just foresee congestion.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Understood. Josh, do you want to make some comments on congestion and the general increase in population in the Shire?
I guess that sort of comes back to what I was saying before about, as council, we're quite aware that parking and traffic and those sorts of things are issues, and that's trying to balance the needs of sort of residents in terms of cars and, you know, getting in and out of town, but also with the pedestrian and cycle nature within the townships and things like that. So it is a very tough thing. Our CBD areas are generally quite small and reside around a few key streets, so it's something that we're certainly, you know, actively working through in all spaces, not just Urunga.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something that came up in the early workshop is also the key roads and where Urunga CBD is located being quite a challenging, congested kind of point getting in and out as well. That definitely came out. Rod, you've had your hand up for a while. I'll throw over to you, Rod.
Yeah, just probably going back to Derek's point, but also Jenny mentioned earlier, I think this was an opportunity to, or maybe in these discussions for council to have a look at the zoning of that CBD for future expansion while this is being considered, because there are quite a number of council and state properties, including the school, very close to where, if we're going to get growth in the CBD, and avoid a second shopping centre being set up somewhere that can split little villages such as Urunga. I think this is an opportunity now to say, well, we're going to have growth. There's 500 houses out there. There's another 22 units just across from my place up here. There's 7 acres next to me that's got a couple of DAs in for it. There's going to be growth, and quite, I would think, substantial growth, particularly with the Rainforest Centre and the Great Koala National Park bringing more visitors and residents. So this is probably a good opportunity to look at, if it's going to grow, which way is it going to go? It doesn't have to happen now, but it's probably not a bad idea, seeing as we're talking about the CBD, of looking the zoning for areas around the CBD and where would the growth take place and how would that fit with what we're talking about now.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rod. Robert or Josh, who wants to jump in first to zoning and capacity? Got a thumbs up from Jeanette. And
I might pass that one to Josh.
Look, I'm not within the planning area in council, so I'm not sure in terms of what the strategic direction for expansion of sort of the CBD area of Urunga is. It's probably one I'll take on notice and just sort of try and get back to you, Rod, and anyone else who's interested in terms of sort of what council's thinking in terms of LEP reviews and zoning reviews and things like that. It does have quite large sort of financial impact for people, so it's probably not something that I'd speculate on without knowing anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Does that satisfy you, Rod?
Yeah, look, it was just more of a comment to start to think about these things, because there's the block next to the club, obviously there's that's for sale. That could become residential or commercial. We don't really, I think it's got split purpose, but that's right on the edge of the CBD as well. And if we have more residential units going there, historically there probably hasn't been enough catering for the parking. We think there's 1 car per residence, but we know that's not the case. There's usually 2 cars per residence. And if that goes out onto the street, that just impacts the parking. And also, where does the commercial centre grow to? If we want more shops and more cafes and a couple of bars and clubs, where's the directions that go in? So I'm not saying there's an answer to it now, but while we're having this discussion, it's probably and as a chamber, we'll be talking to council about these things anyway, but just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Rod. John, you've got your hand up. You might still be on mute. So I might come back to John. Does anyone else have a question while he's coming off mute?
Sorry.
Oh, yep, there you are.
Yeah, I noticed that there's and there appears to be a new area of parking between the on the foreshore, between the toilets and the area designated for child recreation.
On this map,
am I correct? Am I correct
to the
in
skate
that?
park? Is this one at the south of this, the bottom of this map in the dark green? Is that what you mean?
Yes. There's an area of parking shown there, quite a considerable area, and if that is to be parking, then there's an impact on Urunga markets, which is quite an important part of Urunga's life.
Robert, do you want to speak to that, balancing some of the activities that might go there with the need for parking as well?
Sure. So in terms of the parking numbers, as sort of been mentioned before, these are all high level kind of drawings, but the intention there is it would be retaining or about retaining what is currently existing, but relocating it away from the foreshore. In terms of the markets, yes, so there's lots of different functions that happen down there, and this is not necessarily the final location for that. That would have to go through further detailed design to understand where might be the best location for that. But also with the foreshore link and the other spaces, there's also potential that that is additional spaces for things such as markets. That was definitely considered in the design of that. So it might be about necessarily understanding where's the right spaces for all these different functions, but that would be developed in further detailed stages. And
I wouldn't know if this is in the detail, I can't remember the plan, but I imagine, you know, it would be helpful if those activities are listed somewhere in those details of action and brief for that area. Not sure if it's in there, but I know you're very aware we're very aware of the markets and the carols that happen there. So I imagine that area would be redesigned to provide for all of the community uses. Is that right, Robert, in terms of what this
Markets have
document's
moved.
showing? Oh,
Sorry, I think Janet was
The
saying something.
markets have already moved. The markets have
Okay.
moved up. The markets have already moved up to the area, the Morgo Street opposite the pub. They've already moved up there
Right.
Oh,
And
good.
do you know why they moved?
because Reflections moved them up there. It's much better to be up there. Well, they're up there. They're having the next one up there, and this one's up there.
Yeah, great. Okay, good to know. Excellent. I know we've got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions?
So I've just clarified, the markets have been up there, the last markets, and they've been moved up there, the next markets. And so far, all the planning for the markets seems to be in that area in the future.
Okay, that's really good to know. So good to know.
But
Yeah.
I did have a question.
Yep, go for it.
Oh, so my question was down in that green area, you've got a skate park. I'm really happy if you want to move the parking because the markets have moved and move the parking so that everyone's got a free chance to get in there. But you've moved that area into a skate park and a young people's area. Is that true? That's going to be a skate park under the Morgo Street houses. I'm really happy for it, but yeah.
Do you want to explain some of the thinking behind relocating the skate park from its current location?
Oh, I think we need some youth areas in Urunga. It's desperately required to have some youth areas in Urunga, and having the skate park there would be fantastic.
Great, that's great. I understand the current location is pretty unfortunate.
It's unused. It's totally
Yeah.
unused.
Very isolated.
Yes.
Great, we've got 5 minutes. Derek, and put your hand up now if you've got a final question, and we'll get through all of you. So go, Derek. If you're still there, Derek, it's your turn. Hands up. No, any other hands
Here we
up? Oh, there you are.
Hello, it's Kerry Ridgely here. I've been listening in with Derek. I've just got 2 suggestions. In front of the school in Bower Street, there could be potential to do nose in or rear in parking there, like it's in front of the pub area, between Bonville Street and Aurora Street. I figured there is probably space there, and that you might be able to look at the footpath design there. That was another suggestion. That would give you a lot of parking that could be taken away if you're doing a one-way street through the centre of Bower Street where the eating areas are and all that sort of stuff. And the other question was, what could be probably a basic council one, is that referring to the Lido area, there is significant understanding that the amount of dogs and left off leads and on using the foreshore area does have a significant impact on Ramsar wetlands with regard to dropping the visitation by migrating birds by about 40%. That's the figure that they've worked out on. So basically, is that area, ways of doing that would be for council to close off wetland areas so that dogs can't just run off into these areas and do that. And I was just wondering if there is any plans on doing anything like that. I know that was one of the things that I brought up at the previous master plan meeting, and I'm wondering if any of that is in there, because I mean, if we're looking 20 years, you still want people to be able to come and see their birds and actually be able to see those things when they come to Urunga.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, do you want to speak to that? And otherwise I'll also throw over to Josh in terms of dog management.
I might pass on that one to Josh, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, look, good question. Look, honestly, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you if that is something that, we are planning on doing. Look, I'll probably say that, at the end of the day, we need to balance the needs of everyone in the community, and there's a lot of dog owners and things like that. So I probably wouldn't speculate on whether we go ahead with that one or not at this stage. Sorry.
Okay, we would love to see it as in a submission, and that's the way that issue can be considered. Thank you. All right, last question is Rod, and then we're going to have to finish up for tonight. Rod.
I was just a comment regarding the pet management. There's ongoing discussions between council, reflections, and the chamber and the community about where's appropriate and signage and all sorts of things. So it will come up. It's not necessarily part of this master planning thing, but just so that people know that's certainly on the agenda of things to have a look at where are appropriate spots. Are they appropriately signposted, so that we can meet the needs of dog walkers and also people that prefer not to swim with dogs or whatever it might be, and the bird life, of course.
All right, thanks, Rod. We've got 30 seconds, Derek. I'll let you jump in, and then we're going to have to finish.
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
That's all right.
But the birds are more important than the dogs. I'm sorry. They migrate between Siberia and here, and the dogs just live here. So you make your mind up about that one. There you go.
Sounds like it's an important one for everyone to.
And it is a nationally
yeah, it is. Ramsar wetland
is an internationally recognised wetland, so it really is quite vital that.
I also heard actually at your first workshop that on the beach there's some endangered birds that lay their eggs, and the dogs chase them away, and then the eggs go cold and they nest on the sand.
That's it. And there's so much more than that. So we've run out of time. That's cool. Birds are more important than dogs.
Great. All right. Thanks, Derek. Thanks for sharing. We're going to have to follow up. If all the submissions are due by next Thursday, online through the link that Susie's got here, which is reposted. Thanks, Susie. Or you can use this QR code. You can email them direct to council, or use our form, or you can post them. Please be mindful that if you post them, they need to arrive by 5 p.m. next Thursday, the 11th of July. Any questions, give council a call, give Josh or Gemma a call, and they'll be really happy to help. And we really thank you for your time tonight and your participation so far. It's really made this master planning process so much more useful and meaningful and relevant with your input. So we thank you again, and have a good evening.